The NDC national spokesperson, the director of communication of the NDC, was not happy about what had happened in Parliament yesterday. And he went out and made history on his Facebook page. The Honorable Sammy Gyamfi wrote in very strong language about the leadership of Parliament, of the NDC in Parliament. He wrote about the leadership of the NDC in Parliament, I should say. Forgive me for the tautology. And it was very strong. It was so strong that when journalists read the information, they sent it back to him, asking if it was him. And here at Metro TV, we also did the same thing. We sent it back to him to find out whether it was indeed Sammy Gyamfi who was writing. And he said it was him. It's interesting. It's revealing, and it's something that you should see if you haven't heard about it. Let's go and roll the page by page. We have 8 slides of that, of Sammy Gyamfi's tirade against the NDC group in Parliament. Let's see it now and read it. So, he titled it, "Our MPs Defied Party Leadership." And the story goes, Communication Officer of the National Democratic Congress, Ghana's leading opposition party, Sammy Gyamfi, has lashed out at NDC members of Parliament, accusing them of defying the party's leadership and betraying the collective good of for their selfish and parochial interest. Let's move on. It continues and says that the NDC chief scribe particularly singled out the minority leader, Haruna Idrisu, Muntaka Mubarak, and Speaker Alban Bagbin as those behind the orchestration to disregard the party directive. Commenting on his Facebook page, Mr. Gyamfi said he feared no one and called on the teeming party supporters to demand a change in the NDC parliamentary leadership. This part is very, very strong. It stands for potential libel, it stands for potential defamation, and we would like to say at this stage that what we have put on television now is not our view, it's not the views of Metro TV, it's not the views of Good Evening Ghana, it is the views of Sammy Gyamfi. We by no reason believe or agree with him. We are publishing it as a matter of public interest. We do not necessarily agree with Sammy Gyamfi on the views that he has expressed here about Honorable Haruna Idrisu, the minority leader, Honorable Mubarak Muntaka, the minority whip, and the Venerable Right Honorable Speaker of Parliament, the Honorable Alban Bagbin. We do by no means agree with Sammy Gyamfi. We have just published it as a matter of public interest because Sammy Gyamfi has claimed ownership of this particular text that we have put on the television. Let's read it again. The NDC chief scribe particularly singled out Minority Leader Haruna Idrisu, Minority Chief Whip, that's not there, but that's Minority Chief Whip Mubarak Muntaka, and Speaker Alban Bagbin as those being behind the orchestration to disregard the party directive. Commenting on his Facebook page, Mr. Gyamfi said he feared no one and called on the teeming party supporters to demand a change in the NDC parliamentary leadership. Let's move on and see what else comes up. Okay, so it goes on. Below is the statement, and so the statement reads as follows. Comrades, the betrayal we have suffered in the hands of the Speaker of Parliament, Right Honorable Alban Bagbin, the leadership of our parliamentary group, particularly Honorable Haruna Idrisu and Honorable Mubarak Muntaka, and dozens of our own MPs, is what strengthens me to work hard for the great NDC to regain power. It continues. It says, they brazenly defied the party leadership, they brazenly defied the leadership of the party and betrayed the collective good for their selfish interest. And we must not let them succeed in their parochial quest to destroy the NDC, the party that has done so much for them and all of us. The shame they have brought on the party will forever hang like an albatross around their necks. This is very, very strong. Very, very, very strong language from Sammy Gyamfi. And I have to repeat that these views that have been published here, that have been expressed by Sammy Gyamfi, are not the views of Metro TV, and they are not the views of Good Evening Ghana. We do by no means agree with Sammy Gyamfi, nor even believe what he's saying. We have published it as a matter of public interest. Okay, let's move on. It continues. These are hard times for all of us, but we should not let the betrayal of a few quench our love for the great NDC. Rather, let us strengthen us to fight for this party. We all have an equal stake in this party. They are few, We are many. Some have sold their conscience, but ours is intact. And we can work together to rebuild the party from the ashes of 3rd March 2021, which I call the Black Wednesday, our day of self-inflicted shame. Let's move on. Very harsh words from the party scribe. This is the time for us to insist on the right changes in the leadership of the NDC group in Parliament, or forget about them completely. I don't know what that means, and let me pause here to say that the rules of the National Constitution are that if a party dismisses a parliamentary member of parliament, parliamentarian, from that party, the seat automatically becomes vacant and there's a by-election, because parliamentarians are in parliament on the strength of the party. If therefore a party dismisses the person, or the person leaves the party, the seat becomes vacant and a by-election is called. So parties hold a considerable control over their MPs in parliament. I just wanted you to understand that as we sort of consider the threat that Sammy Gyamfi seems to be posing. Let's read that the same one again. It will come back on the screen. It says, this is the time for us to insist on the rights changes in the leadership of the NDC group in Parliament, or forget about them completely. The current leadership have lost their moral authority to lead and are not fit to sit on the front bench of the NDC side of the House. Wow. He said they are not fit to sit on the front bench of the NDC side of the House. More importantly, it's about time we understood that we don't have any NDC Speaker of Parliament. This is very heavy. This is heavy. Sammy Gyamfi says it's about time that we understood. But this was the NDC that celebrated the arrival of Alban Bagbin as one of their own. This was the NDC that celebrated the victory of Alban Bagbin on the dawn of 7 January 2021 as having been elected on the ticket of the NDC to become the Speaker of the 8th Parliament. This was the NDC that celebrated that. Here's Sammy Gyamfi out now, 2 months down the line. He says the current leadership have lost their moral authority to lead and are not fit to sit on the front bench of the NDC side of the House. More importantly, it's about time we understood that we don't have any NDC Speaker of Parliament. No, we don't. We have a Speaker who rode on the back of the NDC into office to pursue his own parochial agenda and nothing more. You trust them at your own peril. Wow, what shall we say about this? I don't know. I mean, I've covered Ghanaian politics for a very long time. I don't know if I've ever seen a party scribe go frontal this way publicly against the leadership of the party in Parliament. I've never seen this before. And I say that I've covered Parliament for a very long time. You can say it's more than 20 years. I've covered many parliaments. From the second Parliament, I've covered every Parliament. And we're in the 8th. I've never seen this before. I never ever saw this before. This is very, very serious. Strange, serious, brutal, very brutal. Got the last paragraph again. It says that it's about time we understood that we don't have any NDC Speaker of Parliament. No, we don't. We have a Speaker who rode on the back of the NDC into office to pursue his own parochial agenda and nothing more. You trust them at your own peril. Let's move on. Let's move on. It says, the hypocrites, and that's how he calls them, can choose to remain quiet or even condemn us for speaking up, so they can remain in the good books of the renegades. You should Google the word renegade. Renegade is a serious matter. Renegade almost means that they are no longer members of the NDC. That's what renegade means. When we talk about the renegades of the PNDC, we are referring to Yen Yen, Akatapori, Zariebo, those guys who left the PNDC, Akoto and Pao, and others like that. Those are the people that they call them renegades of a revolution, renegades of an idea, renegades of an ideology. He calls the leadership of the NDC party in Parliament renegades. I can assure you that there's going to be a response to this. I mean, if you know Haruna Idrisu well, there's certainly going to be it's going to be a brutal response in equal measure. I can assure you of that. One response has already come, not directly from any of the persons mentioned, but from one of their supporters on social media. We have captured that as well. We'll show to you. There's certainly going to be a brutal response to this tirade from Sammy Gyamfi. There's certainly going to be. He says the hypocrites can choose to remain quiet or even condemn us for speaking up, so they can remain in the good books of the renegades. But I and all who are pained by this act of betrayal will not keep quiet, because we don't fear anyone and don't wish to be in their good books. If they can defy the party leadership and interest openly and subject all of us to public ridicule, then they can and must all be called out openly. The NDC party is supreme and it must be cleansed. Wow, 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 wow. This is serious. This is home cleansing. Okay, let's move on. What does it say? Speak up, he says. Speak up. We can and must, and let nobody stand in our way. But when all is said and done, let's work for the NDC with all our might and strength. Quench not your love for the party. Hope must not die. This storm shall pass. The NDC will survive and shall bounce back stronger for victory. So I say to you, be strong. Wow. Sounds like Kwame Nkrumah speaking on the eve of independence at the Polo Grounds, where he said that independence of Ghana is meaningless unless it is linked up with the total liberation of the African continent. Amazing stuff. This is amazing stuff. Okay, you haven't heard the worst yet. You haven't heard the worst. Kwesi Pratt Jr., who is the founder of Pan-African Television, was on Pan-African TV, and he took his time. A full rendition of a political prose, poetry, against what had happened in Parliament and against the leadership of the NDC. Kwesi Pratt ran down the NDC leadership, relating it to 2024 election for almost 10 minutes on Pan-African Television. Let's have a look at that. Hold your horses, have a look at it, have the patience and listen to him.
A most disgraceful day for the National Democratic Congress. This indeed is a day which suggests in very clear terms that the leadership of the National Democratic Congress, not just in Parliament, but at all levels, take their members and their support for granted. It was very clear that the base of the National Democratic Congress was dissatisfied with some of the people who have been nominated as ministers. Very clear. And yet, the leadership of the party, its parliamentarians, went ahead and put their fingers in the eyes of their supporters and told them to go to hell. And this is clearly an act of betrayal. I mean, I've always said that, look, in approving ministers or disapproving ministers, the most important thing should be the national interest. Are the ministers competent enough to handle their portfolios or not? And clearly, it is obvious that some of the people who were approved yesterday are not competent enough to handle the portfolios that they have been given. You take the minister who has no idea about the structure of a sector. No idea about the structure of a sector. And yet, NDC people have made it possible for her to become a minister. This is disgraceful. And in fact, they refused to listen to all the warnings which were sounded. In this very studio, I told the leadership of the NDC that if they joke with this process of vetting and approval of ministers, their party would be in jeopardy. I told them in plain language that it will have repercussions for 2024 elections. Who is going to risk his life and vote for you when you are going to betray them in this manner? People died in this election. People died. Some people were injured. Some people will never recover from what they suffered from this election. And then you go to Parliament, and this is how you behave, and you expect those members to come along with you. The NDC has stabbed itself in the eye, deliberately stabbed itself in the eye, And sitting where I sit, I don't know how the NDC is going to recover from this fatal blow that it has delivered to itself. And look, Kwame, in all honesty, I mean, you know the kind of respect I have for Alhaji Inusa Hussaini. Everybody knows that. I totally disagree with him. The submissions he has made has no basis. The ones he made before and the one he's making today has no basis. Look, in Parliament today, NPP is not in the majority. Go to the Speaker's ruling. The Speaker ruled that there's a majority group in Parliament, not a majority party. Majority group in Parliament. And that majority group has 138 seats. And the so-called minority group has 137 seats. Even if yes, and I have difficulties with the Speaker's ruling. I have serious difficulties with the Speaker's ruling. Given the Constitution, the 1992 Constitution, its provisions, and the standing orders of Parliament, I have very serious difficulty with the Speaker's ruling. Yes, it is clear that independent candidates cannot be acting on a permanent basis in support of one side or the other. They are supposed to be independent. And while their independence is compromised, they should lose their seats. There should be by-elections and so on. And on that basis, I have serious problems with the position taken by the Speaker. But be that as it may, we all allowed it to go and so on. After all, what can we do? You understand? Even working the numbers, how can we, even before the vote has been taken, decide that by all means NPP will win? How? What is the basis for that? Let's say 138, 137. Are we saying that within the New Patriotic Party there are no grievances? There are serious grievances. There are members of Parliament who actually believe that they are as competent and qualified as others who are being made ministers. They've been in Parliament for 3 terms, 2 terms, and so on. They've never been considered. You don't think that they are aggrieved? Why didn't the NDC consider playing with these aggrieved persons in Parliament and so on in order to get a favorable outcome? Now it is clear, if you look at the votes, that some NDC MPs voted for these nominees. Nobody can convince me that NDC MPs did not vote for these nominees. They voted. They voted. Now, apart from that, if you are privy to some of the discussions which happened around approval for the nominees and so on, you knew that there was near or almost unanimous disapproval for Madam Hawa Koomson. So how come that she gets even more votes than Nkrumah? How come? How come? The fact that Hawa Koomson gets more votes than Nkrumah and Akufo ADDO and so on shows that what happened in Parliament is unwholesome. Clearly unwholesome. I am embarrassed, I'm disgusted by this behavior. And I'm waiting to see which one of these people will have the courage to come to the Ghanaian public and ask for votes. Votes to do what? Votes to go and betray us again? What is this behavior? I'm totally disgusted. And you see, it is significant that this whole demobilization of the NDC base happened just 24 hours before the Supreme Court judgment.
Yeah.
It is all orchestrated. Now, should you disagree with the Supreme Court, the very base that you rely on in order to protest and so on has been disorganized, deliberately disorganized by selfish, ungrateful, misguided leaders. They have done this. It's a shame. It's a shame. And indeed, what has happened should touch every NDC leader at all levels. Look, on the basis of what has happened, 2 things are possible. On the basis of what has happened, 2 things are possible. One, that there will be a tsunami within the National Democratic Congress which will sweep aside all the leaders for a new leadership to emerge, or that there will be so much apathy in the National Democratic Congress that the fortunes of the National Democratic Congress will dip seriously. Indeed, watching the National Democratic Congress today from where I sit, I am even wondering whether they should even go into the 2024 elections. I mean, if the damage is not repaired, it is a waste of time to go into the 2024 elections. Because what has happened is that the very confidence of the people in the party has been shattered. And has been shattered by the party itself, by its leaders. They have shattered the confidence of the people in the National Democratic Congress. This is disgraceful, this is embarrassing, and this must be a lesson in the betrayal of the electorate. Complete betrayal of the electorate. Why do you think that the people of Ghana voted in such a way as to give you half of the seats in parliament? Yeah. You think the people of Ghana are foolish? The people of Ghana are not foolish. They gave you those numbers so that you can be effective. It is clear that the people of Ghana are fed up with the situation in which the executive has its way all the time. And that the people wanted a strong parliament which can stand up to the executive. With what has happened, how can you tell me that this parliament can stand up to the executive? They won't stand up to the executive. In any case, one of the issues which is going to come up very, very strongly will be what were the considerations? Yeah. What made MPs vote the way they voted? And nobody can come and talk to me about principle. Nobody can come and talk to me about principle as one of the motivations. You approve Hawa Koomson, who doesn't know the structure of a ministry, and you say it's on principle. Well, what principle is that? What principle is that? Shameful behavior by our leaders. And our leaders are constantly showing us that they have no respect for us. Our leaders are constantly showing us that what we think does not matter. Our leaders are constantly showing us that aspirations do not factor in their calculations. And look, whether they like it or not, this situation will change. It will change very soon. New forces may emerge on our political landscape which will demonstrate to the people that they respect them and that they will do their will. And if those new forces should emerge, we shall sing the requiem mass of the NDC and all the other parties who take the interests of the people for granted. We shall sing their requiem mass. What an embarrassing day. Shameful day.